This is John, your host of Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest and beyond. And okay, Erica, I'll introduce you in a second, but just to let you know, I've had nothing but great guests this year. So, like I tell all my guests at the end of the year, you cannot blow it.
I will try my best. I promise.
No pressure. She's sweating already. Oh, yeah. Man.
You know what? That's why I have the bangs, so no one can see my forehead sweating. That's it.
So I am blessed again. I've had nothing but great guests this year, and I continue to have great guests. And I have on the episode tonight, Erica from Haunted Atlas podcast. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be on my podcast. I really appreciate it. So let's get right into it. Can you tell my spooky friends about your podcast and what's it about?
Sure. So the Haunted Atlas is, of course, a paranormal podcast. We cover haunted locations across the United States. We talk about the history and then how that connects kind of to the hauntings, which I love because I feel like it's really grounded in facts, which is really cool. Yes. And yeah, you can really listen to us wherever you prefer to listen to your podcasts. And we release every other Tuesday.
Nice. So I've listened to you. But my spooky friends, they're looking for you, or maybe they have listened to you. What have you done? What episodes have you done currently?
So our first episode actually was about Eastern State, which of course is always such an interesting one to cover. I feel like you end up learning more information every single time you're looking into this place, which is cool. We covered a lighthouse, which was a really interesting one. And I believe that was in Washington. And that one is really cool. It was kind of like almost like a folklore-ish episode, which was really exciting. And I'm trying to think of the one that we just did. My memory is so bad.
No, that's okay. While you're thinking about that, I love lighthouses because it's so bizarre. People don't understand what a toll that took on you mentally and physically because you had to do everything as the lighthouse keeper. And if you're married with kids, wow. I mean, it blows you away.
It does. It was a lighthouse, like a running lighthouse, and then it kind of turned into an army base at one point. So it was it was such an interesting history there.
Yeah, and I always tell people, I'm in Wisconsin. We have a number of lighthouses up north in Door County and everything. Most of them are no longer working, or they're automated, or they are a base for the Navy or other military people to I don't know what they're doing there, but okay. And I'll never forget, just a really quick story. I'll never forget when you take the tour of the lighthouses, which I highly recommend. It's amazing. There's a ghost tour, and then there is just a regular tour of the lighthouses, which I highly recommend. The ghost tour, it's unbelievable. It's really fun. Door County Trolley is the name of the company. I always give them a shout out because they are a really cool company. If you don't want to do any tours and you want to have a wine tour and cheese tour, sure, go do that too. So I love that. So you can go out, have some wine and cheese, or you can get scared, or you can just stand in awe of all the different tours that you can do. And what I really liked about their tours, when they showed this one, you would not believe it, Erica. So you go on this, and there's, it's on basically right off the coast. And it was like, if you've seen The Birds from Alfred Hitchcock, that's exactly what it was. It was the whole island was full of seagulls. And it was spooky and also disgusting at the same time because the seagulls, they don't have a bathroom. Their bathroom is the world. Yeah,
that's a fair point. Yeah, actually, you know what's funny? I have not seen The Birds because I'm terrified of birds. So that's a nightmare for me.
You wouldn't like it at all. So anyway, what inspired you to do the podcast?
So Sarah is the co-host of the podcast with me, and we really enjoy history first and foremost. And then, Sarah has always had a really big connection to the spirit realm is what I want to say, the words that I want to use there. So I think it was kind of her idea really to get into this. And then we met Brandon and Mitch and everyone from the Haunted US, which is kind of like the larger group. So, the Haunted Atlas podcast is underneath Haunted US. And we really just enjoy each other so much. We all have so much fun together. And so it was just it's been really great joining the Haunted US team. It was such a fun experience getting to know Brandon when we did our first investigation with him. And now getting to meet some of the other team members, and yeah, it's just been so wonderful.
Yeah, I love it. Brandon and Mitch, who are on my show, they were awesome. We talked through a lot of different things. It's so much fun. The history, like you said, I'm a big history buff myself. So I really love it. And I don't know, I think people get confused because they think, it's the typical Hollywood kind of, there's a haunted house on a hill and it's scary and old man Withers died there. Or did he? Maybe he's there running around with an axe. I don't know what he's doing. Which, by the way, I always laugh at that because wouldn't that get tiring, Erica? That you just run around with an axe chasing people all the time? Wouldn't you want to be like, I got to do something else? Go back.
Yes, I would get bored. A couple of years of that, and I would be like, you know what? This does not fulfill me anymore.
This is no fun. I just changed the teenager. She screams. I chop her head off. I go back. I put the head in my basket. I see that, come on, guys.
Yes. At some point, it's just a routine for them, and it's like, well, everyone's got to break routine sometime.
Yeah. But anyway, the deal with the history is you don't know the history of that house, right? For most people.
Right.
I use like Summerwind, for example, but there's like manors and it's endless, right? And then when you look at the history, it's super interesting. So let me ask you this. What is your favorite place that maybe you want to investigate or are thinking on investigating or doing an episode on?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of stuff that we haven't done yet. I think a really cool one would be, this is so small, so I don't know, this is not a popular one, but there is a Jenny Wade house in Gettysburg. It's called the Jenny Wade House. And she was the only civilian killed in the Gettysburg battle / possibly the Civil War.
Yeah.
And I would love to investigate her house. I would absolutely love to get in contact with her. I just think she's such an interesting character and she kind of led such an interesting life. And, at one point people were evacuating and she was like, no, I'm just going to stay here and, make my bread and do my daily things. So I just think that would be such a cool one to investigate.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had a paranormal experience and what age and what happened?
Yeah. So funny enough, my biggest paranormal thing happened like 2 days ago.
Oh, look at us. News break.
I know. I really can't. I'm so excited to do an episode on this one, but we were investigating the Wildwood Sanatorium in it's up in New York, close to Elliottsville. And it was so interesting. Throughout the house, we got some tiny measures of paranormal activity, like we had a cat ball light up or motion sensors go off.
Sure.
When we were in the basement, we did a sensory deprivation session and Sarah had headphones on. And
like the Estes method?
Yes.
Okay.
And, she was lying on this bed and it was kind of where people were embalmed. And we ended up communicating with this little child. A very, very direct line of communication. I have never had an Estes method where Sarah's answering the questions that we're asking directly. It was really crazy. And, at one point, like the one cat ball would go off here and then behind us another one would go off and then to the side another one would go off. And it was like this little child was kind of running around us answering the questions we were asking. It was so cool, so interesting.
Wow, that is interesting. So were you asking questions like, what's your name, like stuff like that, or what were you asking?
So it was kind of like, at first we were trying to garner, who they were. And so it was like, are you a child? Are you an adult? And it was mostly yes, no questions that they were kind of answering and responding to.
Yeah.
And then at some point, they said like discover. And we were like, what would you like us to discover? Is there something to discover down here? And the spirit answered me. And we ended up kind of playing a little game of hide and seek with this little child ghost, which was really sweet. So, oh my gosh, just incredible.
Love that. And you know what's really interesting to me, and I want to do this for the new year. I want to bring a bunch of female paranormal investigators on, like yourself, and have a little roundtable discussion to talk about how it's different from the male counterparts and stuff like that. Because what I always find out is children obviously gravitate toward women because they lost their mother. So if you're a woman, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like, she looks like my mommy, I'm going to go over to her, right? Do you find that kind of like what I'm saying true? Or
I do. I mean, so I personally, this really was one of the biggest paranormal experiences I've had. When I said in the beginning that Sarah has more of the connection, she really does. I think sometimes I'm still a little bit more closed off than I'd like to be. So I'm like working on opening myself up more to the experiences.
Sure.
So I haven't had too much contact, I think, with spirits, but I do find that a lot of the child ghosts we talk about in our episodes tend to gravitate towards, I think, women individuals. Like, just in general, I think they do kind of present themselves more.
Yeah. It's like anything, and I don't know, you're at the mall or something, and there's this little kid crying, it's even though you may not have kids, or maybe you wouldn't even like kids, you still that instinct to go over and say, hey, little boy, little girl, you all right? Let's find your mommy and daddy, or your mommy, whoever, right? And I think and I've been told this many times, and my question would be to you, don't you feel that the spirits are just like normal people? Like they want their mommy, they want their daddy, or they want to sell you something? What do you think of that?
I agree. I think when we talk about a lot of spirits that are intelligent hauntings specifically, because I think, sometimes you have the hauntings that are just on a tape where it's people, redoing their routines or living their lives and not really realizing. But the ones that are intelligent, I think they just want connection. They want to be able to have that connection with humans again. And I think you see that in cases where, this little child wanted to play hide and seek with us, And so I think that's such an accurate theory. And I think even we feel the same towards spirits. When I was in that basement, speaking to this spirit, I almost was like, I told Sarah when she took the headphones off, I was so overcome with emotion because I was like, this little child just wants to hang out with us, connect with us. And it made me really feel the way I think I would feel as if it was like a real alive child kind of going around playing hide and seek.
One of the stories I always tell my female paranormal investigators, which I think is absolutely, it's touching but kind of funny too, is one of my paranormal investigators, an all-female team, and they have gone on numerous different investigations. They're called Elite Vixen, and they're out of Tennessee. One thing they went on, same thing, had the same experience basically. And the woman said she's driving home, one of the investigators, and she keeps looking in the back seat because she has children, and she's looking into the car seat for the child. She keeps looking back, and she's sensitive, and she's like, She keeps looking back, looking in the rear view, because she has a feeling a spirit had come home with her. So she gets home, still has that feeling. And as she's cooking dinner, so she's just cooking some chicken, and she can see out of the corner of her eye the spirit boy reaching for the chicken. And she slapped the spirit's boy away, just like she would normally do one of her kids, and say, no, you can't have it, and you need to go home now. You need to leave, and everything. And I thought that's unbelievable. I mean, that's just, wow,
Yes.
So, it's just interesting to me. So that's why I always say for female investigators that, like I said, I want to have a roundtable next year is, would you ever get scared if a boy or girl spirit followed you home, Erica?
That's a really good question. I think I might be a little startled at first,
Mm,
just because I'm still getting used to the
yeah,
investigation part of the process,
yeah.
for sure. Sarah's husband David has put into my head that children ghosts are not always children. Like
There we go. Yes,
sometimes they can be, pretending to be children. It might be something a little more sinister. So I might be a
yes.
little wary, but I think really you can kind of gain insight into what the spirit is about based on their activities. So,
Hmm.
if I had a little child ghost next to me trying to reach for the chicken I was cooking, I
Yeah.
don't think I would be scared. I would be like, okay, I see it. I'm still cooking it, but no. But I wouldn't be like scared. I think I would have the
Okay.
same
All
reaction.
right. Yeah. And speaking of that, you read my mind. Yes, children do appear as an evil presence. I mean, I've had that told me about paranormal investigators too, who I've interviewed throughout the year and will continue to interview, have said you have to be careful because
Yeah.
you can get close to them and they will continue to, what I was told, they will continue to manipulate you. Be like, you got to get me out of here, and I'm really scared, and and then you kind of open yourself for them to enter your body. And I've had, and hopefully this never happens to you. Not trying to scare you, Erica. Now she's like, thanks a lot, John. I'm not doing this anymore. But there have been paranormal investigators have said that they've had that child enter their body, and it is a demonic presence. And they've had
Yeah.
to immediately have someone on their team who is dealing with, how to cleanse them and everything like that, and tell me some kind of really crazy, spooky stories how they've had to like pray over them and get that person out of their body. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So hopefully it
Yes.
never happens, right?
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Yeah, because I always say that, like, prisons to me, investigating, that all my paranormal investigators, like you said, and yourself, who love prisons because they're the most activity, right? There's so much energy in there, and people don't
Yeah.
understand. Energy just doesn't, it's gone down the drain kind of. It has to go somewhere, right?
Yes. Yeah, that age old like physics thing, like energy is neither
Yeah,
created nor destroyed, right?
correct. Correct. Yeah, and I always find it interesting that and again, I'm a big wimp. I'm like that cartoon. Erica, if you saw me and you'd be like, John, I think there's something in a shadow person. You would just see me run the other way and like run through the wall. And there'd be an outline of my body through the wall with a little bit. Oh, that's interesting. Because I would be really, really frightened the first time. And I've had some paranormal experiences that haven't frightened me. It's been more like, okay, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
Uh, but if I hear like some of these people like who have been in a prison cell, and maybe you can elaborate this on Eastern State Penitentiary, where they've had someone say like, and we can swear on this podcast, by the way, like they've said in the woman's ear or the man's ear, but typically the woman's ear, get out of here, bitch, or I'll kill you. You know what I mean? It's been
Yes.
that strong, and it's been that direct and that
Hmm.
scary. So when you guys, my question is, does that ever scare you? If you would do a prison, would you ever be like in the back of your mind, like, oh, I gotta be extra careful here?
Yeah, so we have not done anything really with negative energy as of
Mm,
yet. The
yeah,
places that we've investigated, which have just been 3, have all kind of had positive energy associated with them
good.
because we did think, we really shouldn't start where we're going to
Yeah.
be scared. Because, yeah, I think walking into that, I almost want to say arena, kind of like walking into the prison environment. I think that's a better word. Walking into that environment can be really scary because obviously the history there has been so
Yeah.
negative. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's that would frighten me for sure. I think, David or Sarah might be able to withstand a little bit more than I would be
Hmm.
able to.
Hmm.
But I definitely
Yeah.
think in that situation I would be like, okay, I'm hearing you. I'm going to leave. Like, okay, we're leaving.
Right.
Because the other part of that really is I don't want to disturb them out of respect. They obviously
Absolutely.
had a really hard life there to the point where they're so defensive. I think anybody entering their cell, anybody entering the hallway that they're occupying is
Yeah.
probably scary for them. It's probably not that they're
Absolutely.
so malicious that they're
Yeah. Yeah.
lashing out. It's just that they're scared, frightened, not okay.
Yeah. And I think, too, like, when I hear paranormal investigators trying to do, like, solitary confinement, I would be a little leery about doing that. What do you think?
Yeah, so we did do in one of our investigations, actually with Brandon, there was a room in the Grand Midway Hotel called the Canopy Room, and we all did, individual EVP sessions there. And I think, in my opinion, I agree with you. I think there's a time and a place to do individual sessions, at least for my mental health. Being in the Canopy Room, I think, is okay because it was just kind of a room. But I think going into a prison environment, or again, somewhere where the spirits are negative, and really not to their own fault negative, just completely understandably negative, I would maybe leave someone else to do the solitary confinement kind of session.
Right. And, I know Sarah couldn't be here, but I've interviewed very, very sensitive people, mediums, so on and so forth, Reiki specialists. One of the biggest things is when you're working with her, does she ever, like, sometimes say to you, like, okay, this is too heavy, we gotta leave, I gotta go?
So we've never really been in that situation before, but I think she would, because there are situations where she's been like, I feel a female presence here, or, I feel like this one's kind of more masculine. This energy is a little bit more masculine. And so she really does. She's so in tune, and she can really trust her gut. So I think, yes, I think if we were ever in a situation like that, she would say, I think it's time for us to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously. One thing I've heard about, two questions here. One thing I think she's told you, which all mediums have told me, everyone has the skill to be sensitive. You're just not practicing it, right? It's kind of like back in the day, maybe you could make the best scrambled eggs. I'm a foodie. I eat too much food. Anyway, it is, right? And you used to be able to do that. You could just, and then, then you got lazy. You're like, I'm not making it. And then you try to make it one morning. I want to make some scrambled eggs. And they suck, right? I know it's a silly analogy, but that's what mediums said. You got to, like, bring your skills out. You got to continue, because she, I'm sure Sarah, as well as everyone I've talked about, has said the same thing. Do you believe in that? Do you think you have some skills, or think you've been sensitive from time to time?
Yeah, I do. I do think that everybody has the ability to kind of hone in on those skills. I think for some people, they're just a little bit more initially connected to that realm, because I think Sarah's been connected kind of since she was a child. So for her, it was just kind of like all throughout her life, and for me, who really wasn't aware of that realm at all, I think it's possible for me to get there. I just think it's not instinct for me. I just think it takes a little bit more work.
Yeah. And frankly, I don't want, from what they've told me, stories. I don't want to wake up and have some old man standing by my bed going, you need to tell my daughter I love her. I'm like, ah!
Yeah, honestly, I think so many times I've said, I think I might think they were real and get, like, the little pipe I have next to my bed. And so I don't know that anyone would want to.
I don't want to be in the shower. La, 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 la.
Yeah.
Jeez, man, come on.
Yes. And that's why the other thing is, I do think there's something to be said if, like, you're a child and have had those experiences, right? Like, if you don't and you're an adult, I think there is sort of a sense of fear. It's kind of like something like flying. I know humans can't fly, but I feel like, if you experience it as a kid, you're just going to be able to do it. And then as an adult, there's, like, that innate fear of, like, okay, I could die doing this. And of course, that's not the same thought, but it is jarring. And I think so, if you have been conditioned to be connected to that world since a kid, I think it's easier.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot easier because you've just been around it and you know how to handle it, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of go from there. I just think that's exciting. So, without further ado, unless you wanted anything you wanted to bring up before we get into our topic for today, Eric.
No, I'm so excited to talk about this.
Yeah. So, what I always found really funny in the past, I'm talking 1700s, 1800s, is In today's world, we all get together. I don't know, however you do it. Maybe you have a Christmas dinner. Maybe you get up in the morning, you sit around the tree with your family or whatever, how you do it. But typically, and Erica, maybe you do not talk about crazy ghost stories or bring up death or dying, right? Do you do that?
No, never.
Oh, okay. I thought you might say yes. Well, John, I do. A matter of fact, and then the ghost. Okay. So we know all the Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol. If you haven't seen it, what cave have you been in? You probably read it in 8th grade or high school, or maybe just read it to be like, I'm just going to read this because I'm sick and tired of people telling me to read it, which is A Christmas Carol. Now, in A Christmas Carol, we had the Ghost of Christmas Past, Ghost of Christmas Present, and the Ghost of Christmas Future. And then we had his business partner, Larrabee. No, I'm drawing a blank on.
So am I. Ebenezer Scrooge and.
Yeah, Ebenezer Scrooge and his partner. Well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It'll come to us. But the topic for today is we're going to talk about Christmas ghosts, like I said, and why people in the 1800s, 1700s will just talk about them. So this is really fascinating to me. So I found some articles off the Smithsonian and some other places kind of talking about it. And one of the things they always used to say is really you had nothing to do. There was no cell phones. There was no TV. There was nothing. And the winter, you had to remember, you had to survive. So like Eric and I and everyone out there, we can just, man, I got to get some bread. Grocery store's still open. I'll run. You had to literally make your own bread.
Yeah.
Right? You literally had to do it. Oh, I need some butter on the bread. Oh, crap. I just run out to the convenience store. That's ridiculous. I have to pay like $10 for some butter. Nope. You had to make the butter, right? And you got to remember, there was no way to get you in crops. Your animals you had to take care of, they were going to die. So you were on the knife's edge of your entire family could die. Right?
Yes.
If you did not have food, crops, water, so on and so forth, right?
Right. As someone who is terrible at planning things, this would not be a good time for me because you really have to plan. You have to be like, it's not even like I ran out of milk. It's like, we're going to run out of milk in 2 days. I need to start prepping, Right.
Exactly. So it just boggles my mind. It's just unbelievable. So when the night grows long and the year is growing to a close, it's only natural that people feel an instinct to gather together. At the edge of the year, it also makes sense to think about people and places that are no longer with us. So remember, we live in a today's world, which I'm really bad at this, returning phone calls, because I haven't seen my cousins, but you got to remember, Erica, your place, my place, whatever, like your neighbors are going to come over, your uncles, your aunts, your cousins, whoever, and you're all going to huddle around the fire. Because why? Because if you don't, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And if you have the biggest fire and the most wood, everybody over to John's house. Come on, Erica. Right. We're all coming over here. Let's go. And thus, the Christmas ghost story had its origin. And its origins have little to do with the kind of, like I said, commercial Christmas we have now. Yes. And we've celebrated since the Victorian age. So the Victorian age, remember, help me out here, Erica, if you do know anything about the Victorian age, just chime in, was a little bit different in the sense of now you have a little more industry, you have a little more, you're living in the city, it's not as rural. Right? Am I kind of right with that? Yeah.
Yes. I think before that, you had mentioned like families gathering. I think all families were literally in the same village because there was no way really. Yeah. So I think like even in this age, like people were spreading out more and kind of leaving.
Exactly. So really what the gatherings would be about, the stories were about was darker, older, more fundamental things. Winter, death, birth, and the rapt connection between a teller and his or her audience. Because remember, I'm just sitting around. I mean, if you've ever been bored before, just bored. I don't know how you can be bored in today's world. That's insane. There's too much. It's like streaming and phone and games. whatever. So, but really it packaged in the cozy trappings of the holiday. So Christmas, as celebrated in Europe and the US, were originally connected to the pagan winter solstice celebration and the festival known as Yule. So, like, there's a Yule log, right? So there was a
Yeah.
special log that you had that you burnt, and like, we like, a log? That's ridiculous. And this is why I love history, because we don't do anything of this more. It's like, put on the Yule log on the TV. There's your Yule log, and you watch this
Yes.
video, right?
Yeah. Go grab the Yule log from Target. Like,
Yeah, right. Like, what are we doing?
right.
Whatever. So the darkest time of the year was seen by many as the time when the dead would have particularly good access to the living. I love that access.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the dead go, here's my time. I'm going to go after Erica. Like, if I
Yeah.
died and, I was like your uncle or something like that, or your cousin or whatever, I got to talk to Erica about some things.
Yes.
Well, I just show up.
Right. And it's so interesting to me that they kind of like people back then associated it with a season. I think now, like when we talk about the veil being thin between our world and the spirit world, we almost talk about it in terms of like location, not really season. So that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's just I love that.
Yeah.
And Christmas as a holiday has a cocktail of elements that invite ghosts, writes Colin Fleming for the Paris Review. This is his quote, I'm quoting from him, there are short days of the year in a weird admixture of pagan habits and grand religiosity obtains. So basically what he's saying is like the pagan world and a different religion. And it's interesting to me because people practice paganism. And I believe freedom of religion, do whatever you want to do as long as we're not hurting people. I don't care. I've had Satanists on my podcast. Some of the nicest people you ever met in your life. They're just really cool and they do their thing. And they're, again, horror movies, pagans, they're gonna grab Erica and they're gonna put her on a stake. We're gonna dance around you, all blood on our faces. Then the beast is gonna come out and I don't know what they're gonna do yet. But you get it, right? But it doesn't happen that way. It's usually a bunch of people with wreaths on their head dancing around a fire in some beautiful dresses and costumes, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, doing their own thing. Again, like we talked about earlier, just trying to find connection, Yes,
exactly. And that's the way you had. And I think that's a good thing when we've lost that. I think tangent. Social media has destroyed connection. When it was supposed to bring us both together, it's destroyed it. Because you can just be like, whatever, Facebook, like, I could text you, Erica, and be like, hey, Erica, what's up? Oh, I'm doing fine, John. You having a good day? Sure. Okay, great. That's not connection. Connection is like, hey, Erica, let's get together and, have a coffee. Cool. And then let's talk about our lives or whatever. That's connection to me. And it's funny, too, they talk about, like, between all the rum punch, remember, they would drink a lot. Well, a few tales are bound to come out. So, you got a bunch of drunk, happy people because, right? We're like, hey. So this was, again, like I said, particularly true in the days before TV, cell phones, whatever, computers. Okay. So, again, Charles Dickens came along with his carol in 1863. Tradition of Christmas was fading, believe it or not, Erica. People were starting to get more into commercial. Like, it was more about, what are you giving me and what are you doing for me, rather than everyone gathering together. Because you got to remember, in the Victorian era, now technology was starting to slowly come forward. So you still had to chop your wood and put it in front of the fire. But maybe if you had a little more money, you could hire someone to do that for you, right? And start your fire and everything like that. Or maybe your chimney was a little bit bigger and your hearth, whatever you want to say, with your fireplace, right? So it kind of changed where people are more like, okay, it's more about, I want to get warm and I want to have the bigger house and I want to do this and I want to exploit the workers. Oh, now I'm getting a whole different tangent there. We were getting into like railroad barons, right? We were getting into, right? We were getting people, now we're working really, really hard to work for someone else rather than we work together. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yes. No, it
Yeah.
does completely. I agree completely.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things he talks about with the Christmas Carol is that really it was still, for most people, still a work day, Christmas. So you work on Christmas, which
Yeah.
today, if you did that, not like some people don't, there's still people out there, and God bless them, that they're working on
Hmm.
Christmas. Truck drivers, medical staff, essential people, right? They have to.
Yes.
Kind of sucks, but we get it,
Yeah.
right? But
Yes.
just remember that too. If you do see someone and it's Christmas, you're walking around, you see a truck driver or somebody doing essential, say, hi, thanks. Thanks for working today. I really appreciate it. Because
Yeah.
it goes a long way for people. And like I said, this is so funny, is the Industrial Revolution, we're kind of skipping ahead now because 1800s, late 1800s, meant fewer days off for everyone, and Christmas was considered so important that no one complained. So everyone just thought Christmas was like, whatever. So when they started it's really funny is because they talked a lot about too here that, and we'll get into Christmas ghosts, I promise you, but I kind of want to give you a little history. Some of this
No,
came
yeah.
from Oliver Cromwell. So Cromwell was the Lord and Protector of England in the 17th century, and he was a Puritan, and he was on a mission to cleanse the nation of the most decadent excess. So he was like, this is decadent. We don't want to do this and everything. And that's just weird to me, right? Like, you basically
Yeah.
had it Ebenezer Scrooge. So now you can see, I get it. Charles Dickens was like kind of talking about Oliver Cromwell with Ebenezer Scrooge, right? Kind of makes a
Yeah.
little sense.
It
And
does,
that's,
especially because his books are all pretty much commentaries on society. So it's like, why would this one be different? It makes so much sense to me that it's based in history.
yeah. And I just think that it's just really interesting to me, too. Now you're thinking, okay, Charles Dickens is thinking about what the past and the future and the present of Christmas, like his kind of own feelings about it. And again, with that book, it's no spoiler alert. If you've not seen the Christmas Carol, I'm sorry. We're not, spoiler alert, forget it. You got to remember, in that story, he put ghosts in there because ghosts meant the most thing of telling you what's going on with your life. So you could see, your future. Oh, wow. I'm not celebrating Christmas and treating my fellow person good. This is what's going to happen to me. Or this is my life right now. I'm making a ton of money and I'm abusing people. Well, this is bad. And then in the past, you can go back and look at like, oh, maybe this is why, you had a good family. Maybe you didn't have a good family. And I think it's just really interesting that people don't see that in today's world, right? That they got to
Yeah.
look back and go like, yeah, maybe this Christmas, instead of buying everybody presents, maybe we just get together and we just celebrate a good dinner, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
I just think that's really interesting. So, believe it or not, too, I thought this was really funny before we get to the ghost. The Christmas card came out of the late 1800s, believe it or not. And I thought that was really funny. But, food and drink and decorations, all that thing. But however, and this is where Ebenezer Scrooge totally comes in, is Cromwell famously banned Christmas Carol. So the singing and stuff, he banned it. He just didn't want Christmas. So again, now you're thinking, I get it. Oliver Cromwell is Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yeah.
That's why he was writing that. And remember, Charles Dickens, he had, obviously ancestors from England. I'm sure they were like, one way or another, getting information to him that Cromwell sucks. We
Yeah.
can't do anything.
Yeah.
And I just think, so people, instead of caroling, I can tell Christmas ghost stories. And that was just really interesting to me because, again, when it came to the ghost stories, there was also terrifying tellers like, and I've never heard of these authors. Please tell me if you have, Erica. E.F. Benson, Algernon Blackwood. I love that name.
I do like
J.H.
that name.
Riddell laid the basically groundwork. Also, A.M. Barrage, that's an interesting, M.R. James. All these authors laid the groundwork, believe it or not, for authors like Stephen King today. Because they were doing ghost stories that had to deal with death and rebirth and darkness. So if you remember, like the ghost of future in the Christmas Carol, it wasn't good.
No,
Right? It showed
not at
him
all.
he's dead. Everybody knows he's dead. You didn't
Yeah.
do anything in your life other than just make a bunch of money and piss off a bunch of people, and everyone hated you. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So let me ask you this. If you had a ghost of Christmas present come to you, I'll use Christmas present. What would you like to see? What would you like to see, like in your Christmas present? Do you like to see you're a good person, or hopefully you're not a bad person? But what would you like to see in the present if a ghost came to you, was sharing that with you?
I really would like to see myself just surrounded, kind of sort of like Ebenezer Scrooge was at the end, surrounded by a loving family, my
Yeah,
friends. I think that's the most important thing to me, is just having that connection during Christmas time. Because yeah, you're right. I always talk about sometimes how commercialized it's become, and how little the connection is these days. So, yeah, I think just being surrounded by my loved ones.
yeah, right, absolutely. And one of the things I think is pretty funny is with let's go to Christmas past because we're big history people. We love history. One of the
Yes.
things was, what do these ghosts symbolize, right? Because I'm sure you had to do a book report. If you didn't, lucky you. Anyway, so like let's start with the ghost of Christmas past. What did they symbolize? So one of the things was they wanted Scrooge to reflect and help remember the choices he made and reflect on them. Now think about regret, right? That to
Yeah,
me is a little scary. So imagine a ghost coming up to you, Erica, and saying, "Okay, Erica, this is what you did in the past. You kind of screwed that up. There you go." How do you think you
I
would handle
know.
that?
Well, I'd like to think I'm open to criticism. So I would hope that I would be like, because I don't think I've done anything so bad that I would be like, although when I was 4 years old, I know, I was 4 years old. My dad said he heard me go out into the living room, and like an hour later, he came out and I had unwrapped everyone's presents. So
Boy,
that might have been the worst thing I've done. But
I'm
no,
calling Krampus.
I deserve it. I need coal for something. You know what I mean?
Mm,
That deserve to be punished a little bit. But yeah, I think I look at Ebenezer Scrooge going through Christmas past, and it's like he's watching it, but he's not really understanding yet, you know? And I'd like to hope that I would be understanding at that moment of, okay, here's where I may have screwed up. Here's
yeah,
what I need to maybe fix, either a characteristic about myself, or if there's a way for me to kind of make up for this mistake in the present. Maybe there's not, but just kind of like at least learn the lesson from that visit from Christmas past.
absolutely. And then we have the ghosts of Christmas present, and they represented generosity and goodwill. And then, obviously shows all the different things, if he would have done this and be nice and everything like that. That's something I always debate about because I think there's so many people who need help. And they're
Hmm.
like, where do you start? Right? In today's world, I mean, not to be depressing. I'm not trying to depress
No.
people here. But like, how do you deal with that, right?
Yeah, I think the story again kind of goes to Tiny Tim, right? Christmas present
Yeah,
takes him to Tiny Tim's house. I really thought that was so interesting that his Christmas present wasn't focused on him, but how he's affected the people around him. And so maybe like that's where to start, is like the people closest to you. How do
yeah,
you make their lives
yeah,
better, fill their lives with generosity and happiness?
yeah. And you know what I think is really interesting is yeah, that you don't have to like go crazy and spend all year volunteering. Sure, if you love that, you can do that, but just a little thing
Hmm.
here and there of reaching out to people who really need help, or just
Yeah.
giving a gift to a child that doesn't give a gift. I mean, you don't have to go nuts. Start in your community and stuff like that. So that's
Yeah.
kind of that's kind of my soapbox. I always tell people on Christmas, like, come on, give it to a food
Yes.
bank. spend whatever amount of money you're going to spend on a gift card to Starbucks or whatever, and
Right.
use that and give it to someone who actually would love to have that and use it. You know what I'm saying? So that's,
Yes, yeah, I
that's my
agree.
that's my 2 cents. And then the Ghost of Christmas Future represents, well, fear and death.
Yeah.
So so that to me is the scariest thing. And you know what's so funny to me is, now we make horror movies about ghosts, right?
Mhm.
Why hasn't anyone made a real horror movie about the ghost Christmas Future? Because that's scary, right? To see your own death and see. I didn't even think about it.
Yes. Honestly, that's a really good question because I feel like that really could be a horror movie.
Yeah,
Really. Just
yeah.
so easily because it is terrifying. It's so scary to think about that.
Yeah, right. Someone showing you when you're going to die and how
Yeah.
what happened, how people view you or viewed
Yes.
you. Like that's really scary. Now we have things like Terrifier 3. We have like Black Friday. We have like Black Sun. Whatever the horror movies are with Santa's chopping everybody's head off and everything.
Yeah.
Which I think is so funny. People have protested. There was a movie called Dead Santa or something like that years ago. People protested it. Like, Santa wouldn't do that. I'm like, you realize Santa is not real, people. I get it, the symbolism, but all right, do something else and pick it up. Oh, come
Yes.
on,
Oh, no, I agree. I think Santa will do whatever people write him to do because, yeah, he's
Exactly.
not real.
Exactly. So one thing I always wondered, and these are pretty much the ghosts that are out there, which is, the majority of ghosts. There's been a number of stories, a number of books and everything like that. And I was looking some things up on like Reddit and other things. Believe it or not, it's kind of faded away. I've been trying to find the history of the ghost stories so I could bring one up. And there's a lot of poems out there that you can read from authors who talk about it. But it's pretty much gone. And really on like Reddit and some other places, it's just more like someone busted into my house and scared me, or I thought I saw this and I didn't. And I'm like, all these the stories they kind of told. You know what I'm saying? Back in
Yes.
the 1700s and everything. I
Yeah.
just like, okay. And I've done a episode on like Krampus and Grilla and the goat, which my favorite is the goat, Erica. The goat comes in and judges your Christmas, like comes into your apartment or your house being like, I don't know, Erica, this is pretty lame. I'm going to butt you in the head with my big horns. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have stories like that anymore, right? There's just nothing
No.
like that.
No, not at all. If there was a goat, my partner Zach and I are in the process of like getting a home. And so we were like, should we decorate for Christmas? If there was a goat coming into my house to headbutt me if I didn't decorate, I would absolutely decorate, no questions asked.
Yeah, absolutely. This just goat just shows up out of nowhere, just goes,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's so gosh. Look at that. Pink and red headbutt. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting to me about that it hasn't really continued. And I really wish it would, because I think that'd be fun, not necessarily scary stories, but some fun ghost stories, sit around. And I'm sure from time to time there are some events that people have them.
Yeah.
But you don't hear it a lot, right? And again, I think we all know why that has happened, because it's just commercial Christmas, and it's just that doesn't sell toys, right?
Right. And I just had sort of a theory pop into my head of like, I think even, the concept of sitting around a fire and telling stories almost always included ghost stories. So it's almost like the people from the 17 and 1800s were just like, well, we're sitting around a fire, we might as well tell a ghost story, but we should put some Christmas into it too, because we're near December. And so it's almost like that. I could almost see that being where these originated from, of just, it being ghost stories, and they threw in some Christmas. And so, I think definitely we've lost that because we don't really sit around fires too often anymore.
No, we don't. And that kind of sucks, because it's nice, sit around your fire pit, or someone does have a fireplace, sit around, and it's relaxing, and you can just talk about some things. I think that's
Yeah.
fun. And again, like it's all on TV now. You can get out your TV and put the fireplace video
Fire
on
on.
there. Boom. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. One thing I wanted to know before we wrap up here is, do you think if you with your team investigated on Christmas, you would see, let's say I don't know, you choose a really nice older home, and the
Hmm.
person says, "Yep, I've had this home since the 1800s. It's been in my ancestors, blah blah blah." We just, do you think you would get a different feeling or vibe from the spirits because it's Christmas?
That's
What do
a
you think?
really interesting question. I think so. Before I was talking about intelligent versus non intelligent
Yeah.
haunting. So, of course, if we're talking about non intelligent, probably not, because
Mm,
they don't know what time of year it
yeah.
is. They're not sure,
Right.
of course, they're not
Yeah.
intelligent. But
Yeah.
intelligent hauntings, not only do I think there might be a different energy, I think there might be different spirits. I think sometimes
Interesting.
significant events, I think, can draw spirits to certain places, right? So we talk about if someone had a traumatic experience somewhere, they might be stuck in this place. If someone has positive memories of this place, they might choose to be there. And I think the same thing can happen with days. If someone had a specific event happen on June 2nd, then maybe they're in a specific place on June 2nd. And I think Christmas obviously has, even though become more commercialized, still been significant. I think it would maybe draw out different energies based on what occurred there. If a family, like you had said, like an ancestral home had us do an investigation on Christmas, well, maybe more family members might be there. Like it might be nice to
Yeah.
think about all of them gathering on Christmas because it was such a significant day.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting because I read some stories that they weren't scary, but they were nice about some people who set a place for their past loved one. So they have a
Yes.
table and they'll set it for a grandma, a grandpa, aunt, uncle, mom, dad, whatever. And I was like, that really struck me a chord with me because I'm like, what if that spirit's there? Does it
Hmm.
recognize it that it's Christmas? Would it be a different vibe? Like if you went into that house and started running EVPs, doing exit method, would it just be you would be filled with joy, or would you be filled with sorrow because they're not there? I mean, that I don't know. It's something I think about.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting thought. I've never really thought about it in terms of Christmas like that before.
Yeah, and I just thought about it because too, like you look at like Halloween, right? Now
Hmm.
the vibe is a completely different vibe. It's still a little more commercial, but it's scary and stuff like that. Thanksgiving, New Year's. I'm like, ghosts know that? Do ghosts know it's New Year's Eve and like they're celebrating with their family? I don't know. That's where my crazy mind works.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I think that's such a nice thought, that they're like, oh, it's Christmas time. Let me visit my loved ones. I think that's such a nice thought.
Yeah, and I just think it's something that I would love to have one of my paranormal investigators go out and just try it and just
Yeah.
like say like, okay, and I'm sure there are people who are doing that. I'm not saying I don't want to take you away from your life or anything like that, but
No.
let's right, you know what I mean? Be like, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to let John know because I would love to know. I just would
Yeah.
just be like, would just go in there and everybody's like, oh no, it's really cool. Because again, it comes back to you go into a house, you go into a certain room, and it's like, okay, this is too heavy, it's too dark. Everybody, like you were talking with Sarah in the present, okay, it's time to go. All right,
Yeah.
sorry I disturbed you. Let's go. Uh,
Yes.
but it's the flip side. You go into a house and you're like, wow, I feel love and I feel joy and I
Yeah.
feel all this stuff. That's just, again, I know we're supposed to be paranormal scary, but it's Christmas and will soon. And, I'm like, I just look at the flip side sometimes, like, I wonder what that would be like.
Yeah, I do really enjoy, like I said, the past places that we've investigated have been like positive spirits, and
Yes.
I really love that. I think it's a lot. You go in, I think, with higher hopes of being able to communicate with someone just like you would, like we were talking about, just like you would like a regular alive
Yeah.
individual. So I
Yeah.
think that's such a nice thought of, maybe on Christmas you get to do it more,
Yeah, I don't know. It's just something like I said, because most of the other times, you go in, you're not really certain. Maybe this is different. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just interesting to me. So before we wrap up here, I have to ask two questions.
Yes.
One, what is on your bucket list to investigate? If I gave you a blank check and I said, "Here you go, Eric. I'm a billionaire. I just won the lottery. I'm going to give you a blank check." Where are you going?
I think now that we have a couple under our belt, Eastern State would be my top choice. I really do want to investigate there, kind of explore around, I just think it would be so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, where you could just get unlimited access and not have
Yes.
to deal with, right? That'd be super nice.
Yes.
Any foreign countries have you ever thought about of going?
So I personally have never been abroad, but Sarah and David went to the catacombs and yeah, yes. And of course, you have to be very respectful.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it would be allowed or even really, I can't think of the word, but just respectful to do that
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting to get to go to
Absolutely.
France and try to investigate some of the places there.
Yeah. And I've spoken to people from the UK and they all told me the same thing, like, "Oh, you guys are puppies." Like I know a guy who has furniture in his apartment older than your entire country.
Yes. Yes, I do. I want to go abroad so badly, specifically for the history. There are things there from the 1100s. The furthest back we can go is like maybe
Yeah,
1600s, maybe
maybe.
1500s, but
Maybe. Maybe. Yeah, yeah. A really funny story. My buddy's been over the UK a couple times and stuff, which I want to get over there sometime. He went on the Jack the Ripper tour, and they're showing him all this stuff. At the end of the tour, they tell you how many people died from Jack the Ripper, and 5 women died. And my buddy started laughing, and I said, "Dude, why are you laughing?" He's like, "5? Our serial killers kill 5 by lunch. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Dahmer, the Green River Killer." Like, he's a big serial killer, true crime
yeah,
guy.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
everyone's just looking at him, and they're like, "Typical American. You guys suck.
Yeah.
Jack the Ripper and 5.
Right.
God, come
Oh, yeah.
on." Yeah, and it's just like, again, the history is a little different. That's why I love it.
Yes.
I've told at ad nauseum many, many times where I like to go, and that is Transylvania. I'm figuring it out to go there. The reason,
Yeah.
Erica, Transylvania is because people are like, "It's Transylvania. Gross.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there." It's absolutely gorgeous because nobody goes there.
Yeah.
Literally, hardly anybody goes there as a trip because Hollywood ruined it for everybody because they're like, it's fog and there's werewolves and Dracula. Like, no,
Yeah.
it's absolutely gorgeous.
That would
Absolutely
actually
gorgeous.
attract me more. I don't know. I'm like obsessed with Twilight, the Twilight series. So vampires and werewolves, I'm there.
Yeah. Dracula's castle, which is still there, Vlad the Impaler, all that good stuff. And it's like, okay, cool. And I love that they have a national hero who put people on the end of pikes to basically send the Persians to be like, "Okay, you're coming over here." I think the Persians, the Ottomans, "Coming over here, this is what we're going to do to you." And they're like, "Yeah, forget it. I don't want to die that way. No, thank you. I don't want to be
Yeah.
on the end of a shish kebab. I'm out.
Right.
Yeah, you guys keep your country. Yay! Country about the size of like Iowa or something. I mean, like, yay! I just think that's super funny. And again, a lot has not changed. Just like when
Yeah.
I've talked to people from the UK, they don't destroy their history. In America, we're like, that's an old building, rip it down, put in condos.
Yeah.
Like, not to get on that tent, but anyway.
No, I get it.
Yeah, it's just weird. So, what do you have coming up for the new year? Any episodes you and Sarah are thinking about, or Braden Mitch, investigation? What's coming up?
We actually are trying to do an investigation together next year. I don't know where or even when yet, but we are trying to do that. And yeah, I think we have a few episodes coming out. It's so funny because Sarah does the research for them. And so I don't really know them because I go in with a complete
I love it.
Yeah, I have no real idea of what anything is, so I can't look it up beforehand and I can't, get any information. And so all of my comments are literally real time. I find out what we're talking about. And so yeah,
Yeah, I
I wish
love that.
Sarah were here.
That's okay. We'll have to have you on again when Sarah and you on again for the new year. We'll bring you back because I had a great time. This was wonderful. I love talking to
Yes.
Yes, this is
Thank you
wonderful.
so
So
much.
yeah, so let Sarah know. We'll figure something out. Have you on for the new year. Maybe we can snag Braden and Mitch back in, talk about that because I did talk to them about having a roundtable for the new year. I'm trying to break it up because I've had roundtables last year where I had a bunch of mediums on and we talked about how they feel and going, about different things. Then I had a bunch of couples who paranormal investigate who are husbands and wives, which
Yeah.
I'm like, how you could do that? Because my wife and I, we argue all the time, even though we love each other. We would just be arguing. The ghosts would just be like, shut up. We would just get EVPs and you shut up. And that'd be the
Yeah.
end of that series. And it'll be fun. It's still great. So again, thank you so much for going a little overtime with me, Erica, taking time out
Yeah.
of your day. Yeah, this is really fun. Like I said, talking about Christmas ghosts. And that's something, again, if you're sitting around, find a good ghost story. And maybe you can sit with your friends and talk about it. I know that's really hard in today's world because you'd probably be talking about an axe murderer who got out of a mental institution. But, who knows? Maybe there's some really cool things you guys can talk about because I think that
Yeah.
we lost that, right? Even if you're
Yes.
talking about whatever, it's still have that communication. Put your phone down. Again, I'm sorry, I'm on soapbox. Put your phone down for like 10 minutes and let's all just try to have some fun and get back to family the way it used to be. But, again, I understand sometimes why that doesn't happen. But anyway, thank you again, like I said, so much. I really appreciate it. I'll tell Sarah that we'd love to have her back on, both of you, and kind of find out a little bit more about Sarah and how she deals with investigation.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much again. This was so fun.
All right. Thanks, Erica, and a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, all that great stuff.
You too. Happy
All right.
holidays.
Thanks, Erica. Bye.